Hey guys, welcome to the Torg Stories podcast. Today's guest is the new women's basketball coach at Mars Hill University in North Carolina. Her name is Coach Emry Tsitouris. Coach Tsitouris is a first-time head coach. I was especially interested in hearing the story of her hiring process and then some of the things that she's been up to since getting the job. If you're a high school player, a coach, a travel coach, you'd like to get in touch with Coach Sit, as she likes to be called. She is Emry, EMRY_T on Twitter. As for me, I'm at Bill Torg. You can also find me at thetorg.com. And then if you use the podcast app of an iPhone, just search for Torg Stories. So I teach at App State in Boone, North Carolina. Our football team is coming off what seems to be called Miracle on the Mountain, the sequel. So that's a Hail Mary last second play that App State used to beat Troy last weekend. So I got kind of a kick out of the fact that Coach Sit texted me right after the game, even though I think we've only met once. So we'll pick up this conversation with she and I talking about the App State game a little bit. Let's hear that audio from App State Radio, and then we'll get to that conversation with Coach Sit and I hope you enjoy it.
Three-man rush. Chase going to step up in the pocket. Sets. Throws high into the air. It's up for grabs. It is juggled.
You must be a pretty big sports fan since you're texting me right after the game, and we don't know each other very well.
I know. Well, I knew you worked at App, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was thinking of you. I saw your email. I was like, that is crazy. And then the guy that tackled the player that ran the ball in, he's the assistant at Catawba for men's basketball. And so I was thinking in my head when I saw that, I'm like, that guy's going to go viral. And then I realized it was Daniel that I worked with the past 2 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And it was awesome.
Why was he there?
He went to App as an undergrad, and so I think he was on the field with the former men's basketball coach. I think he worked with him when he might have been like a student assistant or something when he went to school here. He didn't play basketball, but I think he got into coaching with the guys when he was in undergrad.
All right. So one reason I was interested, so I've gotten two university jobs to teach in my life, one at St. John's and one at App State. And both of those experiences were pretty different as far as like, when did I first know there was a job? Who did I talk to first? What was the application process like? I wondered how much of that you could share with us, just sort of the story of you finding out there's a job at Mars Hill, and then, just take us through that process a little bit.
Okay, perfect. Well, I first saw it on Hoop Dirt, Women's Hoop Dirt on Twitter. I had a couple people screenshot the job to me and text it to me, and I was interested in being a head coach. When I got done playing, I think it's important to write down your goals on paper. And so I said in 5 years, I want to be a Division II head coach. And so this is year 5 for me. And after being with 2 successful programs, getting to coach under Coach Ann Hancock at Wingate and then Terrence McCutcheon at Catawba, I was thinking I was receiving those texts and saw that job. And I'm like, I'm ready for this. And so I was actually, when I applied, I saw it on Twitter, I told you, and then we were actually in the NCAA tournament still. So I applied a couple days before we left for North Georgia to go play Lander in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So I just applied that day. Later that night, I got an email from Rick Baker, the athletic director here, the same day I applied, and he said, call me. And so I gave him a call, and he just told me, he said, don't take another job until you get home from the NCAA tournament. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't really expecting that. And then, I told him my main focus right there was winning the game right in front of us. I was at Catawba. That was my role at the time. And I wanted to lock in and focus on that. And he was totally supportive and just said, give me a call when you get back from the tournament. I wish you guys the best of luck. So I focused on that. We came up short in the first round against Lander. And so got home, emailed him, got a call with him again, kind of talked about some things. it's crazy. You never know who's watching you in the moment. So we ended up playing Mars Hill towards the end of the season. Catawba, we traveled there, and I guess he was watching me on the sidelines. I didn't know who he was, and that's kind of how that process went when he saw my name, in the application, gave me a call. And so that was a big lesson for me is, take your job where you're at, where your 10 toes are at the moment very seriously and do it to the best of your ability. And so from that phone call led to an in-person interview on campus. And that went really well. The people on the search committee were awesome. It just felt right while I was on campus. People are a big reason of why I do this job. And so it's important for me to be surrounded by good people. And that's not something I'm willing to sacrifice. If I don't feel like I'm able to, have good people around me and some people that I think can, help the atmosphere that we're trying to build here, I wouldn't be willing to take this job. But it felt right. The people, I was giving people on the search committee a hug by the time I left that day. And so I am a hugger, but it just felt right. So, about a week later, I got the phone call, got offered the job after that in-person interview. So it was really a 2 to 3 week process. And for me, it was a no-brainer. I've always thought Mars Hill is in a great location. And I've always, from the outside looking in, thought it's somewhere where somebody could win here. And so I was very excited when I got that phone call.
So I'll jump ahead to, people listen from all over the country, sometimes outside of the country. You and I are both in North Carolina. I'm probably about 2 hours east of you. So to someone who's like, I haven't heard of Mars Hill, where is it? What's it like there? What would you say to that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. A lot of people don't know where Mars Hill is, but a lot of people do know where Asheville, North Carolina is. So that's a big touristy spot. And a lot of people don't know that we're actually 20 minutes from downtown Asheville. And so, Mars Hill University is Mars Hill, the town, our community. We're all right here. They're huge supporters of the college. And so our downtown, it's got a little coffee shop, ice cream shop, a couple restaurants, but you could just go to the downtown, the main street there, and it's like a Hallmark movie. So you walk into the coffee shop, it's like a Hallmark movie. Initially when I got the job, I had to meet with a lot of different people on campus, and they'd be like, you want to meet tomorrow? I'm like, sure, where at? And they're like, you want to go to Camden's, which is the coffee shop? I'm like, perfect. So, professors are in and out there, the community's in and out there. It really is like a Hallmark movie. It's a little mountain town. This is my first experience living in the mountains. I'm really from the Piedmonts, and so I didn't really know what to expect. I'm not used to snows, and I know it's the North Carolina mountains, but still, where I'm from, it would get too cold and they would cancel school for a week. And so here I didn't know what to expect, but everybody has just been here, it seems like, for a very long time and never want to leave. And people are just really happy to be here in the mountains. But Mars Hill is in a great location. And that's another reason what excites me about this job is because when you get recruits on campus and can tell them you're 20 minutes away from downtown Asheville, that's a huge selling point. And then, some of these views you just can't beat. Some of these sunsets going down behind the mountains and all this stuff. You're from the mountains, so you
Well,
kind of know what
yeah.
I'm talking about.
I mean, the thing that I would say is I grew up in Indiana. I moved to Charlotte about when I was about 30 years old, went to graduate school. I was coaching at what's now Chambers High School, was Vance. I
Right.
was coaching boys then, and met my wife there, and then went to graduate school again in Georgia, and then we were in New York City for 11 years. And
Oh,
so
wow.
to me, where Mars Hill is one of my favorite spots in the country. We as a family made a lot of sacrifices, maybe professionally, so that we could live in this area. I pretty
Hmm.
much drew a line from Western Carolina to App, and there's probably 15 schools there, some little, some less little. So this is our favorite area of the country. So we live here on purpose. So I'm with you. And then I don't know if you've even been to the Stackhouse, put it on the French Broad River. It's pretty close to you, and that's probably one of my favorite spots I've ever been. Yeah.
What? So we have a stack house on North Main Street. I'm not sure if it's the same one, but it could be. And I've heard people travel all over to come to the stack house in Mars Hill, which who
I
knew?
think that there's one time my family and I one time we rafted the entire length of the French Broad River, which is like
Wow.
115 miles. So one of the ways that you get in the French Broad and come out of the French Broad, there's a put in on the river called Stackhouse. So that's not the one in town.
Gotcha.
One of them's probably named after the other. We won't do the French Broad River history edition of this podcast. That's probably so you get the job, and I my experience has been, you think you know what the job is, you think you know what the work is, but there are a lot of surprises when you're in charge, when you're the head coach. So what were some of the things that when you started doing this work, you're like, wow, I didn't know that I would do that?
Yeah, so when I first got the job initially, a huge part of my job, which my AD told me at the time, is just start recruiting. And so I knew, and it's April 1st when I got hired. And so recruiting April 1st to, August about 15th. And we obviously would like to have that recruiting done well before August 15th. I would say was a bit of a challenge at the time. The portal was really what we had to look at that point of the year. A ton of high school kids have already signed somewhere at that point of the year, and so we started grinding it out in the portal. And it seems like everybody else in the country is also grinding it out in the portal. And so just to try to start making those connections with those kids, and being competitive, and trying to get them to our campus competing with everybody else was a tall task, starting during April, but something that we were able to do. But also just realizing, okay, I'm the head coach of Mars Hill University. If I'm in Hawaii or wherever, I'm still the head coach of Mars Hill University. So whatever's happening, wherever I'm out at, I've got the responsibility to take care of this program. And, that's something people don't feel until you're actually sitting in this seat. And then just there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes to this job than people realize. It's not just us out recruiting and getting to go on the court and practice and do basketball all day. So I would say over 50% of my job's behind a computer or dealing just with other things. And so, sometimes I feel like I have to get up before everybody else is up just to get the basketball part of my job done and make sure that we're good to go for the day, because you never know what the day brings and what fires you're going to have to deal with and try to put out. So I think that's something, just actually sitting in the seat has really opened my eyes to, what it's like being a head coach, and the feeling of being in the seat, which, a lot of people say, oh, college coaching, is that your full-time job? And I just look at them and laugh, because I'm like, yes, that's my full-time job. I feel like I, don't have very much time to do anything else. So just actually, I've heard from other people, but you can hear all day long from, mentors and everybody, but until you're the one sitting in that seat and feeling that responsibility, it's definitely different.
So when you open the portal, lots of names. When you walk into a travel basketball tournament, hundreds and hundreds of players. How do you start finding your way to someone who might be interested in Mars Hill and you might be interested in them? How do you will? To me, that seems overwhelming. You just, you look at that, you look at the 50 courts and you're like, okay, where are the Mars Hills players? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, it starts with connections and kind of who we've already built those connections with. And so I like to go into tournaments and kind of have a schedule and know exactly, at what time are we going to this court to watch this kid or this program and this coach that I build a relationship with. And so that's kind of where I start off now while I'm watching those games. If I see a kid that kind of fits the mold of what we're looking for in a Mars Hill women's basketball player, we'll mark them down on our list and try to get the next game. But I really try to start with the people we built connections with. I've got my recruiting board behind me of all the kids that we're looking at, and we'll try to nail their games down first. And then also, like I talked about, building connections with coaches. I want to support them as well. And so, if I know there's a good coach who's teaching kids the right things, and I can pick from their tree a little bit to add to our program, I like to do that as well. But it's definitely a little bit overwhelming, and you just feel like you don't have enough time in your day to see all those kids. So, being a Division II program, it's just me and my assistant, Tatum Boggs. And so for us, being two people and try to go into a gym that has 80 courts and people are playing from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., we're really doing halves. So I'll be at one game one half and then go somewhere else the next half. And so really, for these kids to just see us there, I hope they know it means a lot if we're coming to their game at all, because there's only so much time in our day. So
So Coach Boggs, was she already there? And tell me about that relationship and how you ended up working together here.
Yeah, so she was already here, and so I met Coach Boggs when I met the team. That's kind of how that started. So when I got the job, the first thing I did was start zooming with every player because I wasn't moved to Mars Hill immediately. And so after I came and met the team and did my press conference, the next day I started setting up Zoom meetings, and Coach Tatum Boggs was a part of that process as well. And so uh, basically I had to start recruiting the current team, and then I also wanted to get to know her and see what she could bring to the table and all those things. And after a great conversation and some people in the community that I had started building relationships with already vouched for her, we are currently getting new locker rooms on the men and women's side, and Coach Tatum and one of our supporters, Stuart Jolly, have built every single one of those lockers by hand, and have been working on this project for a while. And so that alone to me really stood out, because what coaches in the nation really are building their own locker room. And so I thought that said a lot about her. And after a good conversation, I thought it was the right move to keep her on staff, which really helped me out at first. She actually played here. She transferred here, played 2 years here, and then was a GA with sports information for a year, got her master's here, and then also spent last year on the coaching staff. And so for me to have somebody who knows the academic side of things, the campus and everything, with being recruiting my main job when I first got here, it really helped out, because we started getting kids on campus immediately. But with the campus tour, she knew everything. She could answer people's questions from an academic standpoint. Getting her undergrad and master's here, she just had a lot of information about Mars Hill that I had some catching up to do at first.
So when it comes to the roster, about how many people stayed, how many people are new, what's the team looking like right now?
Yeah, so like I said, started in April. So I had about a little over a month with them to do postseason. And so we did lose a couple players during postseason, just people deciding, this isn't the right fit for me, or, just different things that came up.
Sure.
But one of the better players from last year from the returning roster was in the transfer portal when I got here. And she is somebody that I did not want to lose. And so we had one practice, she was still in the portal, and after the practice she walked to my office, she said, "Coach, I'm staying. This is where I need to be." So that was very exciting for me. You know, whenever there's change and there's a new system and new people, that's uncomfortable for some people. And I totally respect that it's not for everybody. So definitely lost a couple people, but I am really excited about the returners that did decide to come back. With the system we're going to implement and are currently implementing, I think it will actually help some of the people that were on the roster already from last year. They have some athletic ability to them that they bring to the table that maybe in a different system didn't let them shine in that area. But the way we're going to play, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit, I think will really help them out being a part of this system. And then when it came to recruiting, culture number one is my number one. Culture, we got to bring in kids that can help build our culture. And so obviously you have to be a good basketball player for you to catch our attention to be a Mars Hill women's basketball player. But outside of that, what kind of teammate are you? Are you coachable? What are you doing when you're not in the game? When a bad play has happened, how are you responding? So I'm watching all those things, and I really want to build a relationship with you as a person to see if this is something that, first and foremost, are you going to add to our culture and help us be better? Because again, you're spending so much time with these people that are on our team, coaches, everybody within our program. It's important to have the right people who you can be successful with on and off the court. And so culture to me is number one. What kind of a person are you? Are you adding value in that aspect? And then also, I would like for everybody on our team to be able to shoot the three a little bit. I think it helps with floor spacing, the way we want to play in transition, and but also that's not a deal breaker. High basketball IQ and a high motor, and just the person that's willing to get on the floor and win those 50-50 balls, or at least battle for them. Are you going and crashing the O boards? I loved rebounding. I was never the tallest or most athletic kid on the court, but I somehow could find the basketball. So to me, I look at these athletic people, really athletic, that don't rebound, and it just makes me so mad. So if I can find somebody with a motor who can just go and rebound and find the ball, because I believe that's all heart, you're going to stand out to me as a player, just because, I feel like heart is what I have. And so sometimes you're attracted to, people who are similar to you in that aspect. And so for me, if you can play with a lot of heart and passion, but maybe lack some of the other athletic abilities, or maybe not the best 3-point shooter or whatnot, you're also going to stand out to me. But we're going to play a fast-paced system. We want to play in transition. We want to run. We want to get teams tired, and defensively, we want to match up when we score the ball. We don't want to celebrate. We want to match up in a full court man-to-man press, send traps. Make teams uncomfortable, and hopefully create our offense from our defense. But offensively, I want to be sound offensively. I don't want to just play in transition and take crazy shots. If we can score in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock with a good shot, and we've got some rebounders running with us, that's the best basketball for me. But we're a college basketball team. We play in one of the most competitive conferences in Division II across the nation. So teams are going to be able to slow us down, and so you might see from us some 5-out stuff. We are lacking depth from the 5 position this year, and that's okay. We're going to play some small ball, and the people we have in that position can play around the perimeter, and I think create some mismatches in our league from that position, and make some people uncomfortable having to defend around the perimeter.
Coach, I can tell you're very practiced in the speech of this is the Mars Hill style, right? That's not the first time you've had to describe how you're going to play. I want to dig in on a couple of those points. So you want to play fast. What is everyone says that, or a player will often say, yeah, I want to play fast. So what does the preseason look like as far as getting people ready to do that? Just specifically,
Yeah, so right now everything is new for us, and so I'm also having to remind myself this is a process, and I'll tell the team that, this is a process. I'd rather slow things down and do them the correct way right now, and that way when October 15th hits, which is our official practice, we're able to speed things up and do it the right way. But right now during preseason, we have 8 hours a week with the team. 4 of those hours are basketball, and 4 of those hours can be conditioning, weights, whatever. So right now we've got four 1-hour basketball practices during the week. We've got 2 days of conditioning, and then we've got 2 weightlifting sessions a week right now during preseason. And so those conditioning days, our players are uncomfortable, but we're talking to them the whole time and saying, during the fourth quarter, this is the way we practice is going to be the way we play. And so we really want to make teams, they can stick with us for 3 quarters, but in the fourth quarter, have we put ourselves in a position to where we're practicing and playing different from everybody else, to where when they're running out of gas, that's when we can continue to knock down those threes in transition and kind of put people away, and we're still able to send traps in our press. And so right now, from a basketball standpoint, conditioning, we've got some conditioning tests that the teams have to pass. And then basketball standpoint, we've got 2 offensive practices. So right now we're just breaking down the offense. It's definitely not put together. We're starting off with our break, and then we're doing some actions from offensive that we would like to run. And then we've got 1 skill development day, and then we've got 1 defensive segment. So right now we're just breaking down the press during those defensive practices, and each week adding something to it. And hopefully, by October 15th, we've got a whole offensive system that we're able to run smoothly, and a whole defensive system that we're able to run smoothly as well. So right now it's a lot of learning, but also learning while playing as fast as possible.
Could you give me a couple examples of just like what's a fitness test? Like what
Yeah. So they all get a summer packet. So, as soon as school is over and we signed everybody, that's the first thing we would give them is their summer packet. And one of the conditioning tests is a 1,000-yard shuttle run that they have to do on the football field. So it equals 1,000 yards, obviously, but guards have to get that in 3 minutes and 45 seconds, and posts have to get that in 4 minutes. And so that's something that, to me, that's just a mental thing. Who can we count on when things get tough? That's a hard thing to do, but it's just something you have to grind out. And so that's our big conditioning test. So basically, if you pass it the first time, you don't have to run it the rest of preseason. But we'll be running it once a week for the rest of preseason until the whole team passes it.
You have this style that you want to play.
Mhm.
Probably you make some adjustments based on the talents of your players, and then you
Right.
also have who you're able to recruit. So have you
Right.
seen any of that sort of adjusting to like who's here and how we want to play and balancing some of that?
Right. So, right now, we are sticking with that's the game plan. We wanna
Sure.
play
Right.
fast, so we're just building up on that right now. Now, the one thing that does scare me with this system this year that we will have to make adjustments if, we just run out of gas. In an ideal situation, I wish I coulda had, 2 to 3 more sound recruits that we coulda added to the system to, this system's built on a 5 in, 5 out system, and right now, do I think we have enough players, to do that and be able to play the way we wanna play for 40 minutes? Lot of question marks right there, not sure. So if that's what happens, that's my really the only thing that's making me think twice about this right now, but it's not making me really think twice because we're going to do it regardless to the best of our ability. We just might be tired, but no, I think this system will help some of the returners, like I mentioned before. There were some very athletic kids on the previous team that I just don't think were in the system that really helped make their skill set shine. And so I think if some of these kids can lock into defense and say, hey, maybe I'm not the best 3-point shooter, but I can go send traps and I can turn teams over and I can lock up the best player on the other team, I think they can find success. And so if people are willing to do that on this team this year, they're going to find minutes with me. So I'd mentioned the depth at the 5 position. We got a lot of guards. It's a guard heavy system. But definitely for the 23 class, I need some post players for sure. But I do like a
Well,
post player that can shoot the 3 and kind of put the ball on the floor from the perimeter as well.
so we'll have to put that advertisement out for you strongly. Looking for
There
a
you
player
go.
that can shoot after this. It sounded like a man-to-man press. Um,
Hmm.
would there be a couple things you would point out that are key? Are you looking to like take to the sideline and turn the dribbler? Are you looking to trap the ball when they can't see you? What would you say are like some major features of your press? Or do you feel like you're giving away secrets when I ask that kind of question?
Well, yeah. So I feel like I cannot say too much because if anybody is listening to that, golly.
Mostly I know that everyone isn't. Mostly I'm of the spirit of just it's one thing to explain what we're trying to do, but to actually to execute that in a practice over time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but right. Are there who in your conference is dedicated enough that they track down us right here to give away those secrets? I know what you're saying.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
So
Um,
just a couple,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
So we have basically the main positions of this that are really going to help us be successful in the press is we call them up guards, and then
Mhm.
we have a center fielder. And then everybody, the other 2 people on the floor, wherever they at, have to, really cheat their lines and rotate up is our lingo. So cheat your lines, rotate up in the press. But basically the up guards, their job, whatever, line up the other teams in for to try to get the ball. We're face guarding them, and we can only face guard them because we have a center fielder behind them, kind of reading the ball where there's going. So the up guard's job is to get the ball handler going as fast as possible up the sideline. So as soon as that happens and they're going fast and feel like, oh, I'm doing good, center fielder's coming, we're getting the trap. But the key is to let them get going before we go in trap. And then everybody else is rotating up, cheating their lines. And then if there's a pass out, we're hoping that's just a Hail Mary out of control and we're sprinting out and matching up. And I really think we can be successful playing that way this year.
How much of that comes straight from Catawba, or mostly where did you learn that? How would you trace that back? Who are some of the influences in the way that you teach pressure?
Yeah, so this press is Catawba's press. We might make an adjustment with the way the center fielder is. We're probably, at Catawba, it's whoever is guarding the inbounder. I saw some flaws in that definitely towards the end of the season. And so we might dictate who the center fielder is always, regardless of who's taking the ball out. And so some people definitely the Lander game, for example, they just put the point guard taking the ball out, and so she'd be in the middle, and that take away, our best trapper up guard in that position. And so we might make some adjustments in that area. But Catawba is really the first time I saw this. I was involved with a program that played this style, and I will say that I saw it cover up a lot of offensive flaws, maybe in some players who weren't as sound offensively, but if they could buy into playing this up tempo, defense style of play, if they can get a steal and make a layup, they don't have to shoot a three. And so you can find some minutes on the court if you're just willing to buy into that. Now, I think if we would have been a little bit better in the half court at Catawba, we probably could have gone further in the NCAA tournament. So that's something that I saw on the offensive end that I definitely want to be better at Mars Hill when people do make us, play in the half court. But at Catawba, we were definitely at our best when we were able to get those traps and just get layups and turning people over in that aspect.
Yeah, I don't know how much you watched the WNBA finals. Did you watch much or?
I actually didn't, and I am so mad at myself because I'm a huge Becky Hammons fan, and I mean,
Yeah.
she is just fabulous. So,
So,
what a year for her.
A quick takeaway would just be that I think, for example, the Sun are super long, lots of pressure. They started trapping a lot of ball screens when it looked like they had no chance. And so you're able to take some players who are more limited, who are very athletic, limited offensively with good length, and now they can function in a game and score 10 points and get 6 deflections and so forth.
Right.
Just you made me think of that a little bit. I'm even going to circle back to some things we glossed over in our last about 10 minutes here. So you had an elite camp. First of all, I thought it was an incredible turnout. I've been to elite camps, Division II elite camps, 11 people there, 12 people there. I felt like, how many did you have, and how do you think you got all those people to Mars Hill?
Yeah, we had about 85 kids there,
Yeah.
which was a huge success for us. That was something else when I got the job. I told Tatum, I'm like, we got to hit the ground running, just inviting kids and making them feel like we really want them there and care about them, which is something that I believe is important, being in our positions. There are a ton of college programs out there, and how are you going to separate yourself? And so I think just being personable and making people really feel like you care about them is going to be huge for us moving forward. It's just huge for me as a person because, as I mentioned multiple times, people are my why. And so we just started reaching out to people on Twitter, emailing them, and it was all personal. So it took a lot of our time. Worked on that seriously, started right in April, just really reaching out to people. We said, hey, June 30th is our camp. We're going to start messaging people. We got the details ready. And I just went to work and had Tatum go to work on Twitter, emails, anything. And we're just calling people by name. We know background information about them. We're doing our research. So everyone we invited, we knew them and we wanted them there too. And so that's just the stuff that I think if you're willing to give a little bit extra effort, that's kind of how you can get turnouts like that. And I was pleased with ours.
You had that. So I didn't even know what the number was, but let's say I've been to at least 20 elite camps. You had that combine aspect of the elite camp where you were, I don't even actually know what you measured. people were sprinting, you were timing, maybe you were measuring vertical leap. How did that, and maybe it was just like, how are we going to keep these 80 kids moving? Maybe it was that, but why was that part of the combine?
Yeah, no. So some of the things that you can see during that combine segment, we did broad jumps, we did wingspan and height, and we did some agility stuff in there. First off, I think it's a little different than some other elite camps. I think it's something that could separate us, and then also some things you just can't lie about when you see a kid that can do a broad jump that's just a crazy amount, and you might not see them on the basketball court necessarily, but then you see their numbers. So it might wanna it might make you want to check them out. And so for us, we need some athletic kids in our system. That's not the end all be all for us, but we're definitely going to have to recruit some athletic people. And so that was a way that we just had on paper that we could see, like, hey, this kid's broad jump is this. Hey, this kid's agility test was this number compared to here's the average. And so if we could just have a way to, there's 85 kids, how can we, have something in our camp that can really let us know who can separate themselves from an athletic standpoint, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
to me, I saw a lot of potential in that, really in a lot of aspects, even if it was a shooting drill where you recorded something as well. Just that when you're trying to look at 85 people and there's really two of you, I know you had extra help. That's hard to do. And
Right.
just to sort of have some more data to go through where somebody might jump out at you who didn't jump out at you for whatever reason, just because you
Right.
didn't walk through the gym at that time. So I thought that was really interesting and excellent. So cool. So what this is a probably tricky question, not one answer. So you offer people,
Mhm.
and they say thank you, and they do some version of blessed to receive an offer from Marcel on Twitter. Now, how do you negotiate that time of like, we got to know we need somebody to come in? I'm sure that depends on the talent of the player a little bit. Could you? And I think as a parent and listening to other parents. Excuse me, I was hoping to not do one of those terrible coughs. So what would you say about negotiating that time? Is that just a one-to-one thing where you're talking with the player?
Yeah, so for us, we had a good amount of money to work with. We really didn't put a timeline on them. Now, with the 23 class, it's a little different. We just had our big recruiting weekend actually this past Saturday. And so some of those kids that came, that's their second time that they've been on campus. And so I can't say I've ever put a timeline on anyone because I haven't. But if we start getting some commitments from kids, uh, we've got enough money right now, but if people start taking a long time, I might have to start putting out some other offers and then calling those kids if I get close to commitments and just say, hey, you're our A player, but we've offered B player, and B player is getting real close to accepting, but we want to give them the opportunity to accept. So for me personally, I have not put a timeline on anybody. It's not made me come to that yet, but um I'm not sure. That's something I'll probably have to navigate moving forward of how that'll look. So
Yeah,
I hope to get some commitments soon though for the 23 class.
right. Thanks. Just a couple more. So I watched some old YouTube videos of you, which I think you saw if you looked at and in one of them you say that you like old people. Can you just try to sort of get a off the court look at you here, Coach? What do you mean when you say that?
That's funny, and I think the video you're referring to is probably my sophomore year of college, and so, look back now, I probably should have said elderly people might
Oh,
might have
sure.
not been the right word to use,
Right.
but am very was very close with all of my grandparents, and so, my mom's parents were my next door neighbors, and they kinda helped raise us, and I was really close with my grandma. Passed away a couple years ago, but at the time she was living, and really close with her. And she just always, regardless of basketball and all the pressure, she just always made me feel good and acted like really nothing was too big of a deal. And so I feel like when I hang out with older people, elderly people, it's just a sense of they've gone through life, everything for them has worked out to the point of where they're able to be where they're at. And so it's just a calming presence for me to be able to talk with someone like that. It seems like everywhere I go there's elderly person who just kind of hangs around my office, or either a supporter when I was a player. So right now there's a guy named Bob Woods, and I mean, right now at Mars Hill, he will come by and bring me brownies or candy, come to practice, and just really uplift the girls. And it's actually such a blessing because, we have demands from them athletically, and he's just out there just uplifting everybody's spirits, and they will all just be like, I love Coach Bob. I tell them to call him Coach Bob. And so that's where that comment came from, but it still stands true today.
I thought that it would probably give you a chance to talk a little bit about your grandmother. I think you mentioned her somewhere. How about sort of an off the court, either highlight or story from Mars Hill? So something, maybe some connection you've made, or a great restaurant, or a spot that you love, just something, off the court from the Mars Hill community that in the time you've been there so far. Kind of putting you on the spot.
No, you're good. So, I talked about the community sense, and I'm talking about Bob Woods, who comes to practice. He, to me, has definitely been a highlight of Mars Hill. He is just brightens my day every time I see him. He's willing to do whatever. I found an old vintage scoreboard while I've been here, and I want to paint it yellow and hang it in my office. And he's just willing. He came and picked it up for me, took it to my house. And, those are the people you see every day in this community because they care. They're here. I mean, he teaches swim classes here for free. He's offered to ride the bus with us this year. So he's definitely been a highlight. And, it's the people of Mars Hill. And then also, just something I want to say that our program's doing. We're working with a program called Go Follow Lead. It's Jana Majette Butler. She's got her PhD in leadership, so sports psychology a little bit, and she's working with our team off the court. And we've had our first Zoom with her, and we started talking about connection and what that means to us. And so that's also been, I know that's involving basketball, but it's definitely off the court, and just getting to see the team in that light, and for them to hear another voice. And with mental health being such a big thing these days, I think it's super important for us to be able to acknowledge that and have somebody who will come in and talk with us about these things and help us navigate those waters as well.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to someone who's considering Mars Hill, or they're considering your program? You feel like we've covered it? Is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I really feel like we covered most things, but the main thing I want people to feel is that we care about you as a person first. Basketball is something that if we are blessed, we get 4 years of. If you get the COVID year, you're blessed with 5 years of. But however, relationships are going to last so much longer than your time being a basketball player. And so for me as a head coach at Mars Hill, that's important to me. I want to be at my players' weddings down the road. I want my players to want to be at each other's weddings, maybe in each other's weddings. When you have a kid, these are the people you're calling, and that's kind of the culture. And everybody says they want to be part of a family, but that's really who I am and what I believe. And that's what we're trying to build here at Mars Hill. And we also, we're trying to build a program that is competitive within our conference region and the nation. And so, I feel like if you can win off the court in aspect, that's only going to help us be successful on the court as well.
Yeah, when you describe the generosity of Coach Bob, I think you strike me as the same kind of person. It looks like one of the really appealing aspects of Mars Hill is that community and people helping people and everybody pitching in. I imagine that's one of the things they were attracted to about you. So congratulations on the job, Coach. I would love to come over and watch one of your practices, and I'm assuming you're kind of an open invite to anybody who wants to come watch.
Absolutely. We've got open practices for sure.
So
come
high school coaches, players who might be interested in Mars Hill.
Absolutely. We would love that.
Thanks so much for your time, Coach.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Smart takes the shot, and the Hoosiers with 3 seconds. Go ahead.
But what we found out is that each one of us is a brain and an athlete
and a basket case, a princess,
and a criminal. Does that answer your question?
I love you guys.